Hey again. Okay, we're on the compassionate allowances from August 2023. Came out a few weeks ago. There were, I believe, I want to say 12. Anyway, I have done several. You can find them in the playlist, compassionate allowances. The one we're doing right now is Leber Congenital Amaurosis. Leber Congenital Amaurosis. It's quite a long one. There are other names for it. So, and I always mention that because if you're filing a Social Security disability or SSI application for a person with LCA, Leber Congenital Amaurosis, sometimes it's helpful when you're putting forth something that's going to be a listing or a compassionate allowance to know these other names in case you see one of these diagnoses that are not Leber Congenital Amaurosis, but one of these other names, and know that it's the same thing. And you can file for a compassionate allowance, SSD, or SSI, if the shoe fits. Okay. If there's coverage there. So some of the other names for it then that I would alert you to is Amaurosis congenita of Leber. And I'm saying Leber because it's Leber. I don't think it's Leber, but I could be wrong. So I apologize if I'm butchering it. Congenital absence of rods and cones, congenital retinal blindness, LCA, which is the short version for Leber congenital amaurosis, Leber's amaurosis, Leber's congenital amaurosis, Leber's congenital tapetoretinal, tapetoretinal degeneration, Leber's congenital, oh boy, it's doing it to me again, tapetoretinal. That's what it looks like. If I say it slowly, tapetoretinal, dysplasia. Okay. So those are alternative names if you see them, bang on this, right? It's a disease that starts in infancy in which the rods and the cones, the photoreceptors in the retinas, which detect color and light, fail to properly develop. It results in severe vision impairment. It is the most common cause of blindness in children. So that's really terrible. And it's a genetic disorder. So there's nothing really you can do to prevent it when they're born. So nobody should feel too terrible here for that, on that account. Apparently, it follows an autosomal recessive inheritance pattern. It can be caused by defects on one of several genes, but the most common one is the CEP290, the CRB1, the GUCY2D, and the REP65 genes. Apparently, there are many variants of this amaurosis, like over 20. And in, wow, almost a third of the cases, the affected gene is not even determinable. So they don't necessarily know. They just know it's genetic, but they don't necessarily have the capability to identify the gene that was having an issue, disordered. It's diagnosed through, so I'm going through what the SSA tells us because this is what they're going to want to see when you apply. So when the medical records come through, it's not just a suspicion of this, it's actually where the diagnosis is made through acceptable sources. So here they are. LCA is diagnosed through ophthalmological and laboratory testing. Electroretinogram test, electroretinogram tests measure the function of the rods and the cones. A genetic workup can help identify the affected gene. All right, so you can do that through those ophthalmological tests at a specialist office, I suppose, or also full genetic makeup on that particular issue. The physical findings that the doctor who examines is likely going to find, or some of them may include low or no vision, obviously, photophobia, which is a hypersensitivity to light. So if the baby or the child is very sensitive to light, That could be one of the signs of this disorder. Nystagmus, which is the involuntary twitching of the eyes. Hyperopia, which is extreme farsightedness. Franceschetti's oculodigital sign. My ophthalmology friends, my brother-in-law, in fact, would he's an optometrist. He would know what this is. And of course, all the ophthalmologist colleagues I have. So there's a Franceschetti's oculodigital sign often showing up. And this happens to be a compulsive rubbing and poking of the eye with a finger. I wonder if that means it's itchy. They say compulsive, so maybe not. They can also have cataracts as a youngster and glaucoma. If you're looking for the diagnostic code that would be found in the medical records, that would help you know if this is going to be falling in here for compassionate allowance, ICD-9 is 362.70. ICD-10 is H35.50. The SSA goes on to tell us that people with LCA require assistive devices and care for the duration of their lives. Some children with LCA experience a slight improvement in visual acuity as they mature, but it's not common that would happen. But apparently it's happened before, so it's worth noting. There is no cure. And the treatment is supportive and relies on standard tools and devices such as canes, audio cues, service animals. So I'm taking that to mean like any other person of blindness, those are the type of tools that would be used to give quality of life and all that, and, independence. So that assists with the mobility and their activities of daily living. If you have this compassionate allowance, I suppose usually blindness is pretty fast in general as when it's not due to LCA, because as a listing, because the numbers of where the eye numbers, I would call it, the measurements that determine if someone's legally blind under the definitions for SSA are cut and dry, right? You go to the doctor, you get the official test. It's very objective. There's no discretion to speak of. But so for the compassionate allowance speed, I suppose if it's LCA, things will somehow move faster. Might just be all one and the same, but worth noting. So in order to, they talk about what the adjudicator is going to be looking at: clinical history and examination that describes the diagnostic features of the impairment. I'm guessing it's that test up above and some of those little characteristics we talked about, like the Franceschetti's oculodigital sign, the rubbing of the eyes, hypersensitivity to light, all that kind of stuff. The laboratory tests confirming visual impairment and retinal dysfunction. So there you have that. So, and then in terms of meeting a listing, it's 2.02 and of course 102.02. Just those. Again, that's not many, but okay. But your compassionate allowance, so this doesn't matter. I did find, not that it's part of the SSA stuff, but I did find a couple interesting articles. One article notes, and this is from Cleveland Clinic, that not all babies lose all of their sight. They will lose some, but not necessarily all. So that's kind of hopeful. Let's see. There was another article, if I could find it. I don't see it. They were giving numbers. Oh, I'm seeing a write-up about the number being there's like less than 50,000 newborns in the country with it. And interesting, it was first described back in the 1800s by Theodore Leber. So I guess that's where it gets its name. Anyway, so it's a blindness condition. And because it's genetic and not curable, I think that helps go towards the compassionate allowance provisions that the SSA has so graciously provided. Going back to the SSA, let me click up here. they do remind us, as they do with every compassionate allowance, that the adjudicators may, at their discretion, use the medical evidence of record or the listings noted above to evaluate the claim. However, the decision to allow or deny the claim rests with the adjudicator. Still don't know what that means. And let me just elaborate. If you have the testing and it's all copacetic, where does the discretion come in for the adjudicator to say, nope, not doing it? Just asking, just curious. All right, so that's that, guys. That's our compassion allowance for the moment. If you or anyone you know, babies, it was one of the articles I was reading about how difficult it is for a parent to notice that your newborn isn't seeing right. I mean, they're kind of fuzzy in the beginning anyway, right? But it's something that makes me wonder if that hypersensitivity to light would be a big deal. Because that's something you could notice. Your baby's going to be like wincing or closing his eyes, maybe, with maybe regular lighting that would not be typical. So I wonder if that would be a good old reason to at least go to the doctor, not to make anybody paranoid when babies act funny, because goodness knows I had 2 and they both did. Anyway, all right, that's enough for tonight. The next one we're going to be talking about is metastatic endometrial adenocarcinoma. Metastatic endometrial, it's been a long day, adenocarcinoma. Okay, we'll get to that one next. I'm trying to get through these, guys. I wanted to get them done really fast after they came out, but it was only a few weeks ago and things have been very, very hectic. But I will get them out. Talk to you later. Have a good one. Be well, be safe. Take care.